The books for Q3, and I'm sharing the studio with Hugo Petit. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, it's the first time you're here presenting
Yep.
the company. I wanted to hear your pitch for NewCell first.
The pitch for NewCell. I would say NewCell is a part of the solution for the fashion industry to become more sustainable. As you know, the fashion industry is one of the larger contributors to the global pollution. At the same time, we expect the market for fashion to increase to up to around 160 million tons in 2030. At the same time, only 2% of the textile waste is recycled today. Many of the brands have understood that they need to become more sustainable, but that requires new solutions, and that's where NewCell comes in. So NewCell was founded by two scientists from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, and they invented actually a way to recycle textiles. So what we do is we use used textiles as raw material and produce a dissolving pulp that we call circulose. And that can be used then by, without any adaptation, by fiber producers to produce textile fibers and further on in the value chain textiles.
Very nice. Now let's look briefly about what happened today. Let's look at the financials a bit. EBIT was minus 24.5 million, and we can compare that to a year ago, was 15.9 minus. The sales, they doubled, but they remain on relatively low levels. And also the number of employees, they more than doubled, up to 55 now. It was 22 in the Q3 2020. What would you say is the main driver behind the increased loss? And is this in line with your expectations as you were going into Q3?
Yeah, I can start to say that's completely in line with our expectations. When it comes to sales, I think there tend to be too much focus on it. For us, focus for us is to make sure that we use the production capacity that we have in Kristinehamn today to optimize and find the different operating windows for the different feedstocks in order to optimize the start of the production in Ortviken. And when it comes to the number of employees, we continue to build the organization, and we expect the amount of employees to increase also during the next coming quarters.
Guessing staff to run the new plant, Ortviken, because I've got a question here from the chat actually asking us to talk a bit about Ortviken and the production plant there. How's the plans coming along?
Yeah, I think we're within the budget, and we follow the time plan that we have. So we expect the plan to start production by the second half or the third quarter of next year. And yes, most of the new employees are of course directly related to the plant in Ortviken, but also different supporting departments that need to strengthen their organization in order to support the plan in Ortviken, but also to some extent any further expansions according to the financial targets that we have.
And right now, you mentioned it earlier, you have a running plant in Kristinehamn right now. How would you compare Ortviken and Kristinehamn in terms of size?
Well, the plant in Ortviken is initially at least built for producing 60,000 tons, and the plant in Kristinehamn is a very small part of that. But again, we do not focus on optimizing capacity. It's about using the plant to optimize for when the expansion actually happens in Ortviken.
Now, I have a question about shipping costs. Most of your customers, you're exporting to China, to India, and to Germany, for example, and a lot of more countries as well. And during the pandemic, we've seen increased shipping costs. There's been a big bottleneck of containing costs, basically. How would you say these shipping costs are affecting NewCell?
I can start with saying that so far we haven't had any material effects, and that's mainly because most of the equipment we have purchased or we purchase is produced and transported from Europe and not from the Asian countries where the main bottlenecks are. But of course, when we come to the second half of next year and we start our commercial production, this could be an issue. If nothing changes, of course, it will affect us. But on the other hand, we also have clauses in our offtake agreements that give us the options or the opportunities to adjust our prices.
I wanted to talk a bit about the operational and the financial targets. You mentioned that Ortviken is built to produce 60,000 tons of your product. And that's in line with your operational targets of producing just 60,000 metric tons by 2022, next year. And further along, your limit is 250,000 metric tons by 2026, and by then achieving an EBITDA margin of 30%. What would you say is the most challenging part of reaching this? First, the 2022 target.
Well, the 2022 target is, I would say, now mainly focus on getting the deliveries in time. I would say that's the main challenge for the 60,000 tons. I think for the continued expansion, of course, I mean, these projects are complicated, but I think getting the financials in place for the next expansions is, I would say, one of the most important areas to control.
Of course, it's an interesting market that you're in, because you don't raise the question of demand. Is demand ever an issue? Is your product is it hard to sell?
No, I think, I mean, brands have a huge pressure to become more sustainable, and if you consider the market size, as I said, we expect the market to increase to around 160 million tons. If you compare that with the 60,000 that we initially, or the 120,000 in 2025, there is no constraint, I would say.
Now let me raise a viewer question as well. I got it from Twitter. Who are your main competitors, and how far have they come?
I actually don't want to mention any specific competitors, but there are, of course, several competitors. I think overall we are ahead of the competition, 5 to 7 years. But I think also important to mention that is very important to have competition, because it makes what we do trustworthy, and it shows also the potential. I sometimes use the example, there are more than one car manufacturers. So I think it's a good thing. Right.
Hugo, thank you so much for coming here and answering my questions. I wanted to raise one last question. I want you to give you the opportunity to raise a few highlights of Q3 and now the beginning of Q4. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I think the biggest highlight, I would say, is the environmental permit that we received in the beginning of the third quarter. I think it's a critical one, so to say. Without permit, no plant.
So what's the permit in detail?
Well, it's the permit that allows us to start the production, or makes it possible for us to start the production in Ortviken. Otherwise, I think the letter of intent that we have signed with Kelheim, a fiber producer. So with this letter of intent, we actually have sold around 83% of the capacity in Ortviken. And I also would like to mention the continued cooperation with Levi's that will launch a version of their iconic 501 jeans in January, containing circulose.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. So all in all, I think we are well positioned to achieve what we have promised.
Great. Hugo, thank you so much for coming here, and good luck in the future.
Thank you.